continuing in our journey series, talking about this. As we journey through Scripture, what does it tell us? How does it contribute to our lives as we figure out what it means to find and follow Jesus? That's not just like a casual thing you do. It's not just something that happens. It's something that we do with intentionality. And as a church, as a group of people gathered, we have a mission. We're here for a reason. And as we find and follow Jesus and invite other people in our world to do the same, what does the Bible have to say about how we do that? I love that we're going to get to dive into an element of that today that I think carries a lot of weight. And my prayer for you this morning is that God would shift some things in your life as we wrestle with what it means. We're going to look at the book of Jeremiah today. And Jeremiah is not one of those like super easy reads. It's not one of those you read through, you're like, oh yeah, I totally get everything you're saying. It makes perfect sense to me. At least I don't. So, but I love reading through the book of Jeremiah because even though our cultures are completely different, even though our worlds look a lot different, so many of the things that Jeremiah talked about and confronted in his culture are things that are still happening in our culture. Things that are happening in our lives. And so Jeremiah was this guy that God talked to in his young years and said, hey, I got a plan for you. I want you to be a messenger to your entire country to warn them about what's happening. Because Israel had this promise. If they honored God, God was gonna bless them and they were gonna flourish. If they chose not to honor God, God would remove that blessing and there would be consequences. And so Israel is walking this out, but they're definitely living in the not honoring God camp. They're in this time of mixing together all these different religions and all these different philosophies and just kind of going with whatever feels right. And so Jeremiah just confronts them. He puts out a message saying, hey, I'm warning you, those things that God said are gonna happen, they're really gonna happen. It's coming. And Jeremiah faithfully delivered that message, whether it was out in public to everyone or talking directly to civic or governmental leaders. Jeremiah faithfully delivers this message. So that's the context that we've read through this week. But as we jump into it, Jeremiah chapter 17 is one of the messages that Jeremiah delivered that I think carries meaning in our world today. It's one of those things that he said that I'm like, okay, yeah, that's something I need to figure out. And so Jeremiah chapter 17, we're gonna start in verse 5 and read just a little bit here, and then we'll jump back and look at what it means to us, okay? Verse 5, this is what the Lord says. Cursed are those who put their trust in mere humans, who rely on human strength and turn their hearts away from the Lord. They are like stunted shrubs in the desert with no hope for the future. They'll live in a barren wilderness in an uninhabited, salty land. But blessed are those who trust in the Lord, who have made the Lord their hope and their confidence. They're like trees planted along a riverbank with roots that reach deep into the water. Such trees aren't bothered by the heat or worried about long months of drought. Their leaves stay green and they never stop producing fruit. God goes on to say this, the human heart is the most deceitful of all things. It's desperately wicked. Who really knows how bad it is? But I, the Lord, search all hearts. I examine secret motives. And so Jeremiah delivers this message about trust. When I think about trust, a movie comes to mind. It's actually a movie that was kind of rebooted last month. You might have seen the live action Aladdin. I loved the Aladdin when it came out. I watched that movie and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Because I desperately wanted a magic carpet. Like that would fix my entire life, right? Like I was this awkward little junior hire. I'm like, this would be awesome, but I just couldn't find one. So, but I love Aladdin for another reason, because there's a scene that sticks out to me where, Aladdin like comes into town with all the pomp and circumstance, all this fanfare. He's like riding on an elephant, doing backflips, and the genie's there, and it's so cool. And he's all dressed all fancy. He gets to the palace and meets Princess Jasmine and all that. But then later that night, Jasmine gets in a fight with her dad, right? And Aladdin shows up on the balcony with his magic carpet, and he's like, come on, we'll go for a ride. Oh, no, all that stuff. I won't do it to you, don't worry. But he's like inviting her to come on the carpet, and then there's this interaction where he leans out his hand and he goes, do you trust me? Do you? I'm like, no! Are you kidding me? Like, this is exactly what parents need to talk to their kids about. Guy shows up in fancy clothes with a magic carpet. Do you trust me? No, run away. Like this is training material. I'm warning you. Like, you got a junior high daughter, training material right there. Like, this is creeper circumstance, right? Like, this is stranger danger in a movie, right? But he does draw an important reality out in that moment in saying this: who you trust matters. Who you trust matters. And I think that's one of the things that Jeremiah is getting at. Who you trust really matters. But it's not just this like, don't trust anybody. Everybody's out to get you. No, the point is, trust here is deeper than just like being okay with someone or believing that they're gonna tell you the truth. It's asking this question: who do you rely on? Who do you put your confidence in? We could ask ourselves this question: who are the people that are helping shape the decisions and actions that you live out? Because someone, and I think this is another point that Jeremiah has made, or God's making as he delivers this message through Jeremiah, you are trusting in someone, even if it's yourself. None of us are going through life completely independent. We're putting our trust in someone, and God is challenging us. Who do you trust? Who are you putting your confidence in? And the reason that's so important is this: is the person you trust the most shapes your values and guides your decisions. The person you trust today, the person you trust the most, shapes your values and guides your decisions. And today you have to wrestle with this fact that you are putting your trust in someone, whether you realize it or not. And so God steps forward and he makes some pretty bold claims. Like God's really putting it out there and letting you know how it is. He says this: he goes, if you will trust in me, you'll be like a tree with deep roots. That is to say this, that your life will be constantly fed and nourished, that your life will constantly have what it needs. If you trust in God, he goes on to say that you'll be able to endure even the heat of the middle of summer because you have deep roots. That is to say that when trials come your way, when life gets difficult, it's not that trusting in God means that life will never be difficult. It means that when it's difficult, you can still live with hope, because you trust in God. He goes on to say, even when it gets worse than that, when you're in drought, right? When you face tragedy, when life is like falling, the wheels are falling off, we can still live with hope. And then I love this promise: you'll be like a tree with green leaves and good fruit, right? Your life will constantly be full of good things when you trust in God. Now we read that and we're like, okay, yeah, that sounds pretty good, right? Like, if you believe God and what he's saying right there, then you would be foolish not to trust in him. So why don't we, right? I don't know about you, but sometimes it's challenging to trust in God. I think there's two primary challenges we face. The first one is it's difficult to trust in God because we can't see him and we can see other people, right? It's difficult to trust in God because like, okay, God, I want to trust you. And I'm like really sure, well, I'm mostly sure, I'm pretty sure you're real, right? I'm pretty sure you're there, and I'm gonna trust you. But it's difficult to trust a God who we can't see. It's a lot easier to go, okay, I get a bank statement, I see the numbers in there, I'm gonna put my confidence in my ability to provide for myself. I have a spouse and she makes me dinner, so I'm gonna trust her, right? Like, weight of the man's heart. But the reality is it's a lot easier to trust when we can put our hands on. But God says, wait, time out. When you trust in people, when you put the confidence of your life on people, it will lead you to devastation. And he reminds us that in verse 5 and 6, you'll be like a shrub out in the middle of the desert. Your life will dry up if you put your confidence on people. Why? Because they can't help but let you down from time to time. So God goes on, put your trust in me. I think the second thing that we get tempted to divert our trust is not just what we see, but I think even more significant in our culture is we get distracted by what we feel. Our culture has fed us a mistruth that what you feel is real. And it's just not true. It's just not true. It's bad advice. And the reason it's bad advice is because at first it sounds like good advice, right? Like, follow your heart. Just be true to you. Like, go with your gut, right? What you feel. Have you paid attention to all the things you feel in a day? Right? Like, if you went with all those, you'd look like a crazy person. If you wake up tomorrow morning and go with what you feel, you will not go to work. I'm just saying. And if your boss goes with what he feels, you will not have a job. This is the consequence. This is what it looks like when we go with what we feel, but yet so often what we feel can distract us from trusting in God. Because I feel this, I feel like going this direction, and it ends up being bad advice. I was thinking this week as I was thinking about all the ways that we get bad advice. You know, the reason bad advice sounds like good advice is because it makes sense in the moment. I was 7 years old, and when I was a little kid, I got car sick a lot. And so we were in town and driving around and doing errands, and I got car sick. And so my dad dropped me and my mom off at a park so that I could chill while they finished errands, took the other kids, went and finished the errands. And I don't know how this works out. I don't know how that this was a good idea, but the car sick kid ended up on the tire swing. So I'm on the tire swing spinning as if that's gonna help. Come to my mom after like 3 minutes, I'm like, Mom, I do not feel good. And she gave me some bad advice. I know I'm like throwing Mom under the bus this morning, but I still can't believe she said this. I remember it vividly. She goes, oh, that's okay. Go back to the tire swing, spin the other direction, you'll unwind yourself. What? As a 7-year-old, I'm like, yeah, makes sense, right? So I'm back on the tire swing in a matter of moments, throwing up all over the park because Mom gave me some bad advice. But in the moment, it sounded like good advice. It made sense. Can I be honest with you? That is the same as someone looking at you and saying, go with what you feel. Go with your heart. In the moment, it feels like good advice, but it will not lead to a good end. It can't lead to a good end. The Bible says, right there in that verse, the heart is deceptive. Verse 9. The heart is deceptive. It's got wickedness in it, right? And when I think of the heart being deceptive, I think of my 1.5-year-old daughter. She's got a lot of words. She loves to talk. She talks all the time. And a lot of 1.5-year-olds aren't super verbal, but my daughter is. And so I'll be holding her. I'm like, okay, what do you want? Do you want some yogurt or do you want some fruit? She's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, good, got it. So we're gonna go with this. All right, do you want yogurt? Yeah. Do you want fruit? Yeah. I'm like, all right, good. Okay, so I go to the fridge, I pull out the yogurt, put it in a bowl, grab a spoon, take it towards her mouth, and I get no, right? No. I'm like, what? You just said she wanted yogurt, but she didn't want yogurt. See, I think our hearts are a lot like my 1.5-year-old. They don't really know what they want. It's not that your heart's like trying to trick you, but your heart doesn't know what it wants. Your heart wants right now what it won't want in 10 minutes. And so if you live following your heart, it makes sense that Jeremiah warns you, time out, your heart's deceptive. You don't really know what's in there. Now, I get it this morning. You're like getting up, getting ready for church. Like, go get some encouragement for my life. Pastor's like, your heart's deceptive and wicked. You're like, ouch, right? It's not exactly like, hey, have a good week, see you later. But I think there's some reasons that the Bible, obviously there's a reason, God's not just saying it for fun, but I think some of the reasons that the Bible warns us that our heart are deceptive is we have to understand the heart always wants to be satisfied right now. And that's one of the reasons it'll lead you astray. Your heart always wants to be satisfied right now. Your heart will choose 7th, 8th, or 80th best right now over the very, very best later. Because the heart has an appetite to be satisfied right now. And that's why it will deceive you. You can't just follow your heart. You can't just live based on what you're feeling today because your heart wants to be satisfied right now and it will lead you where you do not want to go. Woody Allen famously said, the heart wants what it wants. But before we take that advice, can we consider that he was justifying a relationship with an underage person? Like you gotta consider the source here in the second, right? And you can believe, yeah, heart wants what it wants, sound good. But if you isolate the quote, it will lead you astray because you gotta look at the fact that this does not end where I want it to end. Second thing that I think the reason the Bible tells us that our hearts are deceptive is the heart only pays attention to immediate outcomes. Your heart only pays attention to what it's gonna get right now. Your heart always says yes to dessert, right? Your heart always says yes to fries with that meal, right? Your heart always wants something that's gonna satisfy it right now, not thinking about the long-term circumstances. But that means this: our hearts will lead us to drinking small doses of poison as long as it tastes good right now. In all aspects of your life. I'm not just talking about what you eat or what you take into your body. In all aspects of your life, your heart will lead you to take small doses of poison as long as it tastes good right now. Your heart is deceptive. Who really knows all that's in there? The last thing is this, is we have to understand our heart's appetite is never ending. The appetite of your heart is never ending. The appetite of your heart will take you from realizing that you've got an awesome family and life is good to going to work and making some dumb decisions because your heart wants something. Your heart will take you, right? Your heart will take you onto that car lot to buy that brand new car, to drive off of that lot and compare your car to everyone else you see drive by until you see someone with a nicer car, and then your heart will go, should have bought that one. This is the reality of our hearts. And you know what? It's not even bad news. It's not like our heart is bad because it's got a never-ending appetite, but our heart is trying to direct us in this moment, because here's the reality. Follow this for a second, okay? A never-ending appetite only has one solution. It's a never-ending supply. A never-ending appetite only has one solution. It's a never-ending supply. God realizes I am the only thing. God is the only thing that never runs out. So he actually wired your heart to crave him. He actually wired your heart to want him and to be satisfied in him. The problem is our hearts always take us to these short-term, temporary Band-Aid patches rather than finding our satisfaction in who God is. Your heart has a never-ending appetite that was made to crave a never-ending supply that you can only find in God. That's why I love this verse 10. He says, God says this, "But I, the Lord, search all hearts and examine all secret motives." I think one of the takeaways that we have to walk with today is this, is just because you feel something often or because you feel something deeply does not make it true. Your life will be better if you will live with the truth that just because you feel something often or just because you feel something deeply does not make it true, because your heart will trick you. But God goes deeper than even we go in searching our hearts and discovering what's in there. I love the Psalms that says in chapter 37, verse 4, "Take delight in the Lord and he will give you your heart's desire." He knows your heart better than you do. And rather than finding satisfaction or fulfillment right now, he's leading you down a road of being satisfied and fulfilled in the long term. Not the kind that has a consequence later, but the kind that has a reward later. This is the plan that God has for you. And that's why he says, don't trust in people. It'll lead you to ruin. Don't trust in your heart. You don't even know what's in there. Trust in the Lord your God, and you'll be like a tree planted on the riverbed. No matter what comes your way, you will flourish. Here's the takeaway. My heart may not know what it wants, but my God does. My heart may not know what it wants. My heart may not even know what's in there or where it's going. But my God knows me so intimately. He knows what's in here. He put it in there. And he's asking you, come on, let me help you find it. Let me help you fulfill that. Trust in me and you will flourish. Because the person you trust in most shapes your values and guides your decisions. The person you trust in most shapes your values and guides your decisions. So what do we do? How do we put this into action today? The first thing is this. I'm gonna challenge you to two actions. First one is this. If you trust in God, then we have to choose to do things God's way. I can't say I trust you and then choose not to follow. Trust and obedience are permanently connected. And I think so often it's not that we don't trust God because we don't know what he wants us to do. We just like our way better, right? God's like, love your enemies. And you're like, yes, but I can pay them back right now. Like, I got an opportunity, God. It's not gonna last long. God's like, put your spouse before yourself. Put others before yourself. And you're like, oh gosh, I really had a hard day at work. I'm real tired, so. God's like, parent with patience. Invest in your kids and build them up. You're like, yeah, but yelling works. Like, they listen when I yell. We can go with all these things, and it's not that we don't get God's way. It's just like, I like my way better right now. Because we go with what we feel. But here's what I'm saying. If you trust in God, we have to choose to do things his way. You will flourish if you choose to do things his way, because trust and obedience are permanently connected. The second thing is this. You are invited to go to God for satisfaction. You are invited, and if you trust in God, we have to go to him for satisfaction, because your heart is endlessly needy, but nothing you can buy, nothing you can try, nothing you can taste, nothing you can experience, nothing you can touch or see, nothing, no temporary pleasure could ever satisfy your heart. But God says, hey, come to me to find satisfaction. Come to me to this relationship to find life. Because an endless supply, an endless need can only be met by an endless supply. When I was a youth pastor, we played a game in small groups sometimes called Hug the Potholder, and I'm gonna completely ruin it for you today. So sorry. But I would encourage you this, actually, play this game with your kids this afternoon, take a video and post it on social media and hashtag Faith Tri-Cities, because I wanna watch it. It's one of my favorite things. I love this game. I played it with several of the people in this room. But Hug the Potholder goes like this, okay? Hug the Potholder, you take an oven mitt or some kind of hot pad or whatever, and you got a group of people that are on the inside, they know what's up, and then you got a couple people on the outside that have no clue what's going on. You bring the one person who has no clue what's going on into the group of people who know what's up, placing this in the middle of the room. You say, okay, your job is to hug the potholder. Like, okay, but there's one rule, okay? You can't bring the potholder more than 1 foot off the ground. And when you hug the potholder, you will have completed your objective and the game will be over. They're like, okay, right? I can figure this out, right? So they usually crawl down on the floor because it's hard to hug something that you can't take a foot off the ground, which it's just fun. Let's just be honest. So they crawl down on the floor and they begin to hug this potholder, and they begin to embrace it and they begin to love it, but they are only met with the encouragement of the onlookers going, whoa, time out, no, you gotta hug the potholder. Like, you really gotta, you gotta just love it good, right? Just get in there and hug the potholder. It seems like no matter how hard they try, nothing works, nothing satisfies. And so as they're hugging and loving that potholder, what they don't realize is someone in the crowd pulls from behind their back a pot and holds it. See what I did there? Hug the potholder. They're like, I'm trying. I've had people look up at me and go, why are you holding a pot? And then go back to the oven mitt and like, hug the oven mitt. Hug the potholder. See, I love the moment when the light bulb gets turned on and they go, oh, it was never about the inanimate object on the ground. There's been a person holding the pot the whole time. So hugging the potholder isn't about going there. I can only win if I go to that person. See, I feel like trusting God is a lot like hug the potholder. My favorite part is we take a spoon sometimes and just try to draw their attention to it, right? Just like, they're like, you're weird, right? I'm like, no, you're weird. You try to draw attention and be like, hug the potholder. They're like, what? I don't get it. And then the light bulb comes on and they realize, I can't win until I go to them. I feel like this is God with trust. We're trusting all these things. We're trusting in people. We're trusting in our own heart. We're trusting in our money. We're trusting in something else to save us. And God's sitting there going, come on. You can't win until you realize that trust isn't about the inanimate objects in your life or even the other people. You can only find fulfillment for your soul when you realize he's the one. He's been the potholder the whole time. So here's my question is, what do you do about trust? First thing you gotta do is this. You've gotta identify the things in your life that you've been trusting in. What are the shadow trusts that have distracted you? Is it something you can see? Has it been your own feelings or your job or your identity or your car or how other people see you or this persona that you put on? Maybe it's in social media or it's these other avenues. Maybe you put your trust in your addiction or something else that you go to. What have you been trusting in that's been letting you down? Because I guarantee if it's not God, it's been letting you down. And And then what does it look like to put my trust in Jesus? To go, okay, God, it doesn't make sense always, but I'm gonna do things your way. God, it doesn't make sense. Maybe it's not an immediate fix, but I'm gonna find my satisfaction. I'm gonna find my joy in you. Because here's the big point, is we've gotta come to a point where we say this to ourselves and to the people around us. I'm gonna trust God because he has and he holds what I need. I'm gonna trust God because he's the one who has what I really need. Let's pray. Father, thank you for who you are. God, I'm so glad that you have what I need, because my heart has confused me from time to time. It's led me astray. I'm so glad that you have what I need, because God, so often, no matter how hard they try, people just can't hold my trust. They can't be my confidence. But God, you took this endlessly needy heart with an appetite that is never satisfied, and you became directly my endless supply that never runs out. You have all of the peace, all of the fulfillment, all of the joy, all of the hope that I need to endure life. So this morning, God, I pray that you'd give us the courage to confront those shadow trusts in our life, the things that we put our confidence in that are not deserving of it. And that, God, you would reroute our lives as we put our confidence, our trust in you, as we choose to obey and find our satisfaction in you. We pray this in Jesus' name.